The Dean of the Faculty, the Vice Dean in charge of postgraduate studies, the head of the department, the General Secretary, dear colleagues, the administrative staff of the faculty, dear guests, dear students, good morning. This conference is part of the scientific activities of the Faculty of Arts and Languages. These activities that have marked this academic year. Last week, we discussed issues related to ESP, English for Specific Purposes, which represents a branch of ELT, English Language Teaching. Today, the focus is on various questions related to the teaching of English language at all educational levels. Because of the importance of English, which is considered as a lingua franca, English language in Algeria reflects a gradual evolution towards a more pronounced appreciation of this language, mainly with its introduction into primary schools starting from September 2022. This decision represents a crucial step in the Algerian landscape, as English has now become an integral part of languages to be mastered alongside Arabic, Tamazight, and French. Thus, from the grammar translation method, the direct method, the audiolingual method, to the communicative approach and eclecticism, many changes occurred in the field of ELT. As learner needs are in constant growth and development, the need for appropriate methods, teaching contents, pedagogical tools are of paramount importance. In other words, in the context of English language teaching in Algeria, efforts to enhance the quality of education, the adaptation of the teaching methods, or the integration of new resources and technology to better equip learners in mastering the English language are issues that need to be discussed and explored. Therefore, the aim of this conference is to provide researchers with an opportunity to share viewpoints about various aspects of ELT. Finally, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to the head of the university, Professor Beniaish, the Dean of the Faculty, Professor Bktash, for their support, for all the colleagues, the head of the department, Mr. Mziani, for all the participants who contributed with their communications. A special thanks to Professor Idri for her support and guidance. I wish you, dear colleagues, a successful and fruitful conference. Now, the floor is to the Vice Dean in charge of postgraduate studies to say a word concerning this event.
Let's first the head of the department to say a word and then
Okay.
yes.
So, Mr. Mziani, the head of the department.
Good morning, everybody. The truth is, I didn't expect taking the floor anyway. So thank you again for being here today. It's always a pleasure to have you as participants as well as those who are in charge of the organization of this great event. So you're welcome and good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mziani. The floor is to the Vice Dean, Dr. Allal Blaid, for some words concerning this conference.
Bonsoir alaikum. Bonjour tout le monde. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Dr. Fadila Qassi. Of course, you are all welcome to this first online conference on the new trends in English language teaching. First of all, I would like to thank the two teachers, Dr. Fadila Qassi and Dr. Professor Nadia Ahwari, for all the beautiful job they are doing in the department and the faculty. Of course, they are doing a very interesting work. They are contributing highly in scientific research and in guiding all of us, of course, as first of all teachers in the English department, and as, of course, responsible in the faculty. And then we thank the organizing committee for, of course, the job they are doing, I mean, in preparing the different works of the scientific manifestation. And at last, we thank the communicants, the different communicants from the Bijaya University and the different universities of Algeria. And at last, of course, we wish you a beautiful moment and good luck.
Thank you, Dr. Hallal. The floor now is to the Dean of the Faculty, Professor Bektash, for the official opening of this conference.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Donc, avant de commencer, je tiens à saluer nos invités en ligne qui sont en ligne, les enseignants du département de langue anglaise au niveau de notre faculté. Et je tiens aussi à saluer le comité d'organisation qui a préparé ce colloque. Donc, on arrive à la dernière activité scientifique pour l'année 2024 au niveau de notre faculté. Nous allons clore donc l'ensemble des activités en beauté avec justement une touche d'actualité par rapport à l'enseignement de la langue anglaise, puisque actuellement en Algérie, les débats scientifiques sont centrés sur l'enseignement de la langue anglaise au niveau de l'université, au niveau des écoles primaires, puisque normalement cette année, c'est la première année où les 5e années vont passer le premier examen de 5e en langue anglaise. Donc on arrive déjà à la première promo qui va passer au moyen, donc avec déjà une formation en langue anglaise dès le primaire. Ça, c'est une très bonne chose. Moi, je vois que le travail des universitaires, justement, c'est de réfléchir sur ces méthodes, sur les approches qu'il faut utiliser pour justement accélérer, faciliter l'enseignement des langues étrangères en général en Algérie. Pourquoi? Parce que les langues étrangères sont une ouverture vers le monde. Plus nos enfants maîtrisent les langues étrangères, plus ils ont accès, l'Algérie a accès aux différentes cultures mondiales, à la technologie dans les différents pays du monde. Pourquoi ne pas, par exemple, aussi encourager l'enseignement de l'espagnol, de la langue allemande, etc. Mais je trouve que l'enseignement de la langue anglaise a pris du retard en Algérie, puisque la langue anglaise a comme avantage, contrairement aux autres langues, la langue anglaise est une clé qui ouvre toutes les portes. C'est un passe-partout. Comme les clés que nous avons à la maison, pas un passe-partout. Donc la langue anglaise est un passe-partout. C'est une langue qu'on peut utiliser dans tous les pays du monde. Vous allez en Allemagne, vous utilisez l'anglais. Vous allez en Espagne, vous utilisez l'anglais. En Afrique, la même chose. Donc là où vous allez, maintenant, la langue anglaise s'est imposée comme langue internationale. Donc il fallait, pour les Algériens, déjà maîtriser cette langue. Je pense qu'il y a un travail qui est en train de se faire. J'espère que nos étudiants vont suivre. Mais cela ne signifie pas aussi que nous allons oublier notre identité ou nous allons négliger les langues nationales d'Algérie. Nous encourageons l'enseignement des langues, nos langues, les langues identitaires, mais aussi il faut encourager l'enseignement des langues étrangères. Ça, c'est un point. Le dernier point sur lequel j'aimerais bien insister, c'est que nous devons faire profiter de nos travaux de recherche pour la tutelle, notre tutelle, et surtout pour le secteur de l'éducation qui attend justement des chercheurs, des propositions pour les mettre en œuvre. Et je vous assure que avec les travaux que nous sommes en train de faire, tout sera pris en considération parce que nous tâtonnons le terrain et faites-nous des propositions, nous allons les soumettre à notre tutelle. Donc je remercie le comité scientifique de ce colloque. Je remercie Madame Professeur Ahouari et Dr Qassi pour les préparatifs, le comité d'organisation, le secrétariat général de notre faculté qui a mis tous les moyens nécessaires pour le bon fonctionnement de ces activités scientifiques. Je n'oublierai pas aussi de remercier, j'aime bien le mot en anglais, de head, donc le chef de département d'anglais qui a toujours ouvert ses portes et qui encourage les enseignants à justement activer au niveau du département, parce que notre mission, je l'ai dit déjà, n'est pas uniquement notre tâche l'enseignement, mais c'est aussi la recherche. Je remercie aussi mon ami et collègue Belhaïda Allel, le vice-doyen chargé de la post-graduation et de la recherche, pour le nouveau souffle qu'il est en train de donner à la recherche au niveau de la faculté. Sur ce, je déclare ouvert les travaux de ce colloque. Je vous souhaite donc bon courage et merci beaucoup.
Merci, Monsieur le Doyen. Donc, sans trop tarder, we are going to start our first plenary session. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues and friends, dear students, welcome to the first session of this conference. First, I would like to express many thanks to the organizers of this conference, especially Professor Nadia Idri, Dr. Fadila Qasi, Dr. Siham Saibi, and Siha for their outstanding efforts. In this session, in the first session of the conference, we have the following speakers: Professor Dr. Fadila Aylushush, Professor Nadia Idri, Dr. Mariam Kater, Dr. Wafa Warkini, Dr. Ali Al-Bilaid, and finally Dr. Khairuddin Amel and Dr. Buharur Karima. The speakers will each have 20 minutes to give their presentations, followed by a Q&A. I encourage you, the audience, to participate in the discussion, as your insights and questions will make a rich intellectual exchange. The first speaker in this session is Dr. Fadila Aylushush. Just a short bio about Fadila before she starts. So Dr. Fadila Aylushush is a permanent lecturer at Abdurrahman Mira University, Bijaya, at the Department of English. She specialized in applied linguistics and language teaching. She's a full member of the LSMS Research Laboratory at Bijaya University and a PRFU project manager, New Trends in English language teaching. Her research interests include EFL teaching, language and identity, and technology-based teaching. She has supervised many master dissertations and has participated in different national and international conferences. The title of Dr. Aylushush's presentation is Folk Tales, a springboard for teaching the 4 language skills. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Touche. Thank you. So, welcome once again. The title of my presentation is Folk Tales, a springboard for teaching the 4 language skills. So, of course, we have the following plan: introduction, definition of key concepts, how to use folk tales in teaching the 4 skills, teaching culture through folk tales, pedagogical recommendations, and a conclusion. I will just start with this quotation. Motivation is the key to learning. It is the driving force that enables students to engage, persist, and succeed in their educational journey. Why? Why this quotation? Because as teachers, we always look for ways to attract and to attract the attention of the learners and to increase their motivation. Because without motivation, there is no learning. So motivation is the essence of learning. Folk literature is considered as an important cultural input which can be an integrated part of EFL teaching. It contributes in the development of the basic language skills. Folk tales can foster language learning by providing rich and varied content. Furthermore, it helps students appreciate diverse culture and traditions, thus leading to cultural enrichment. I mean that folk tales are in all countries. All countries has its own folk tales. So by using them, you can provide your learners with insight about the culture of the other. Our contribution sheds light on the advantages of using folk tales in EFL classes as a pedagogical support for teaching the 4 skills, namely listening, speaking, reading, writing. In fact, you are going to see how can we use folk tales as a pedagogical tool to teach all the 4 skills. So just a short definition, if you want, of what do we mean by folk tales. According to Merriam-Webster dictionary, a folk tale is anonymous. It means that there is no precise author. Timeless and placeless. It means it's not fixed in time and space. Tales circulates orally among people. Generally, you have them circulate orally. They are not written. That means naturally and usually a folk tale has no author. It has no certain time frame, and again, it's not confined to any particular place. A folk tale is transmitted and circulated orally by people. You all remember, I guess, mainly for those of my generation, the long winter nights where we were gathered around the fireplace listening to our grandmothers telling us stories. And of course, some of my colleagues at the department, they always ask me, where did you get all the proverbs that you use when you speak? This is, in fact, because of these moments that I shared with my grandma, I get all these proverbs. So it is, in fact, a wealth that you can get from your parents and your grandparents. In other words, a folk tale is a traditional story that has been passed on by words of mouth before writing systems were developed. Because nowadays we have some tales that I think of Les Contes d'Anderson, Grimm's brothers, and so on. They are recorded in written forms. They include fable-like tales with animals as the main characters and an explicit moral lesson. Behind each short story, there is a moral that you teach through them some good behavior, if you want. Fairy tales with some magical elements, myths which are considered sacred, among many other subtypes. We all remember in our culture, Tseriel, Lunja, and so on. Okay, these are figures from our cultural background. A folk tale is easy to understand because of its simple style language. One of the main characteristics of this kind of literature is that it is easy. It means that you can listen to those fairy tales with pleasure. It means you don't need to make efforts to understand the content of this kind of literature. How to use folk tales to teach the 4 skills? We are going to see first reading. Folk tales are considered as one of the literary genres that can be used in the reading classroom to enhance language skill, motivate students, and increase their cultural awareness and tolerance. So the key words here are enhance language skill, linguistically speaking, motivate, psychological factor, motivation, increase their cultural awareness and tolerance. It means interculturality. So all the 3 elements are provided by the use of this kind of literature. According to Milford, when a component of arts, such as folk tales or storytelling, is integrated into the reading curriculum, students experience more meaningful learning. And we know that when you provide a meaningful teaching, learning is easier and the learning takes place. They are more actively involved with the text. The use of storytelling has been linked to improve literacy and language development. When children participate in storytelling, it can increase reading comprehension. They learn to listen to stories. They must visualize the setting, characters, problems, and other parts of the story. These comprehension skills must be acquired and applied when students are reading in order to gain understanding. So, here are I have suggested some activities that may be used by teachers using these the stories. Create a short or a story map. The first activity is to invite your student to create a story map. After reading a folk tale, have students fill out a story map that includes key elements such as the setting, the main characters, the problem, events, and the resolution. So students can use a graphic organizer for this activity. The next one, read aloud. Here, the aim is to enhance fluency and expression. So the main objective is to improve students' fluency and expression. Story elements puzzle. After reading a folk tale, provide students with a story puzzle where they have to match elements like characters, setting, conflicts, resolution with the correct part of the story. Another activity, folk tale graphic organizer, provide students with a graphic organizer to break down the folk tale into its basic components. It means after reading, they are asked to break down the story into its basic elements: introduction, rising action, and so on. Students will fill in details from the story as they read, helping them to focus on the plot structure. This is for reading. Now let's move to speaking. In an EFL class, for many learners, speaking is one of the most difficult skills that can be affected by some factors such as anxiety. I used to be very anxious when I was a student, okay? I disliked speaking in front of my mates. So, low self-esteem, lack of motivation, and etc. Some psychological aspects may hinder learners from speaking and expressing themselves. This is what Krashen calls the affective filter. When it rises, the student feels anxious. It means that this hinders the learner to participate. But when the filter is low, the student feels comfortable to speak and express his or her ideas. As a matter of fact, a high affective filter causes the learner to be a relatively inefficient learner. This is likely to result from anxieties, disturbances, and inhibitions. A low affective filter, which may result from feeling of relaxation, well-being, or success, maximizes learning efficiency. And here we refer, of course, to Krashen. Therefore, the role of English language teachers is to create a relaxing atmosphere where learners feel at ease and thus can express themselves. For example, using storytelling produces a low affective filter in children because they feel relaxed in these circumstances. So here are some activities that we can use in teaching speaking through storytelling. Role-playing. Have students take on the roles of characters from a folk tale and act out scenes. This helps them practice dialogue, pronunciation, and expression. Let's say they are going to perform the tales between them as the characters, okay? Story retelling. Ask students to listen or to read folk tale and then retell the story in their own words. Here you work on vocabulary because they are going to use the vocabulary that they have acquired in reading or listening to the story. This improves fluency, encourages them to use the vocabulary and structure. It means vocabulary and the syntax. So they are going to use them orally, what they have acquired from the story, they're going to use them in retelling the story. Debate and discussions. After reading a folk tale, students can discuss the moral lessons or themes within the story. You can initiate a debate between your students. Are you against or for this or such behavior? They can express their opinions on characters' actions, making arguments to justify their views. This promotes critical thinking, very important. We have to promote critical thinking in our learners, and helps students practice argumentative language. Another activity, creating new endings. It means that you ask your learners or your students to imagine another end to the story. So have students work in groups, and here you can also use it for collaborative work, because generally collaborative work we always think of writing. teaching writing through collaborative work, but you can teach even listening through collaborative work. Have students work in groups to create alternative endings for a folk tale. Afterwards, they can present their endings to the class, explaining their choices. This encourages creativity and provides opportunity for speaking and negotiation within groups. So you can have the students working on the end of a new end to the story to work in collaboration. Interviews with characters. Ask students to choose a character from a folk tale and conduct an imaginary interview with them. One student can be the interviewer and the other can play the role of the character. Listening. Sorry, there is a typing mistake because, okay, yes, one N, logically, okay, this is a typing mistake, sorry. Activities that use folk tales to improve listening comprehension. Listening for specific information. You can use a folk tale to develop listening. Play an audio version of a folk tale or read it aloud and have students listen for specific details such as the names of the character, the key events and the location. Afterwards, ask comprehension questions related to story. It means you ask them about the main aspects of the story. What was the main character problem? Where did the story take place? And so on. True or false statements. After listening to a folk tale, provide students with a series of true or false statements about the story. Students must listen carefully to determine if the statements are accurate. It means that this activity, you test the ability of students to just concentrate on the main points of the story and to select the main ideas of the story. Listening and ordering. You provide students with a list of events from the folk tale in random order, and you ask them to reorder according to the chronological order of the story. This activity helps with both listening comprehension and understanding the narrative structure. You even teach them by the same way how do we write a narrative structure. Gap fill activity. While listening to folk tale, give students a transcript with missing words or phrases. Students must listen carefully to fill in the blanks. This activity focuses on listening for keywords, understanding context, and improving vocabulary retention. For writing, very important. Tasneem found that folk tales strongly motivate the student to be creative in writing. Folk tale is also always associated with creativity. Taylor suggests that teaching writing through folk tales in the simple form can be carried out using procedures such as asking the student to tell a folk tale, asking the student to write it down, correcting the grammatical mistakes. It means you provide them with a copy with some mistakes and ask them to correct the mistakes. Returning the written folk text back to the student and asking the students to read it. Asking the student to revise and expand their written folk tales. Practicing the student to comprehend the vocabulary used in the written folk tales. Asking the student to retell the story. Asking the student to share their correction and discussing the moral value of the folk tales. So some other activities, create a new folk tale. You try to take the example and create your own one. Ask students to invent their own folk tales. They should create a hero or a heroine, a challenge, a moral lesson, integrating elements such as magic, animals, and supernatural beings that we find in this kind of literature. Story mapping and plot development. Students can map out the story using a graphic organizer such as a plot diagram. They will identify key components like the position, rising, action, and so on. Then students will use this map to help them plan and write their own original folk tale. Imagine another end. It's like with speaking, we use it in writing. Now the fifth component in EFL, in teaching, because we use only to focus on speaking, reading, writing, and listening. But in fact, there is the fifth one. The fifth skill is culture. And Biram and Krasham are Crash are the first who worked, yes, on these cramps, yes, and Biram are those who pioneers who worked on this aspect of EFL, ESL, okay? By experiencing stories from different cultures, children can discover valuable insights about another culture's values, beliefs, history, practices, and customs. Moreover, when children learn about diverse cultural traditions, they not only broaden their view of the world, they frequently develop a greater appreciation of their own family's heritage. This is the aim, and we all aim at developing intercultural competence and empathy towards the others. Some activities. Explore cultural values, select folk tales from various cultures, and analyze the morals and lessons they convey. Students are invited to discuss these values and compare them with their own cultural norms. Research the historical and social context. After reading a folk tale, have students research the history and social context of the culture it comes from. Recommendations. Folk tales can be regarded as a valuable, authentic resource for teaching both language and culture simultaneously. You teach not only the language, but even the other very important element, which is culture. They offer rich contextual material that not only enhances language skills, but also provides insight into the cultural heritage and tradition of a community. Teachers can design activities that integrate reading, writing, listening, and speaking, allowing students to practice various language skills while exploring the themes and messages embedded in the folk tales. This is what I have just explained. Teachers can encourage discussion on cultural diversity, empathy, and tolerance. I repeat, empathy and tolerance. You are learning a foreign language, you have to develop these skills, empathy and tolerance, creating a supportive environment that celebrates different cultures and perspectives. As a conclusion, teaching children folk stories and fairy tales offers a number of practical benefits in EFL classes, as supported by many studies. According to Khalil, it is proven that stories provide context for learning and can be taken as a resource for the teaching of a foreign language. The use of folk tales as a pedagogical tool can help EFL teachers create a good atmosphere that will motivate their learners in their journey, discovering the language through fairy tales that involve magical creatures, fantastic adventures and events. These supports will contribute in developing different aspects related to English learning and in long term their linguistic and communicative competencies, as well as their critical thinking and empathy towards our culture. These are my references, okay? And of course, thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you, Dr. Aylushush, for that enlightening presentation. So Dr. Aylushush, in her presentation, explores folk tales as a pedagogical tool in the EFL classroom. She highlights the use of traditional stories like myths as a learning method for developing core language skills, motivating the students, and enhancing their empathy, cultural awareness, and also promoting creative thinking. She recommends this creative and engaging approach to be used in the EFL classrooms. It's my pleasure to introduce the second speaker in this session, Professor Nadia Idri. Nadia Idri is an educator with 20 years of teaching experience, currently holding a rank of full professor. She served as a project manager at 3 ENL Plus for English teaching, MOOC design and delivery at the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research, Algeria from 2022 to early 2024. She has been one of the pioneers of working on the shift in language planning and practice for EMI, Integration in Higher Education, acting in the CNIAD committee and the third cycle training of English ESP course design and project manager at the Faculty of Medicine to develop EMP, English for medical purposes, with over 70 publications both nationally and internationally. Professor Idri is a prolific scholar and an active participant in various pedagogical and scientific initiatives, including teacher development, doctoral training, conference organization, and quality assurance efforts with her university. She is the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Studies in Language, Culture, and Society, and founder of the creative writing and academic writing competitions in Algeria. Today, Professor Idri is gonna give a communication entitled Innovating EFL Practices, Capacity Building through Interactive and Culturally Relevant Approaches. Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fatiha Raounitouche, for this nice presentation. I appreciate. This theme is a bit important because I would like to introduce you to a concept which is not very well known, but it is gaining interest globally, and you will understand why. I will carry on with what my dear friend and colleague Dr. Fadila Qassi, the importance of culture. So you finished with culture, but I'm going to start from this issue that we cannot ignore while learning foreign languages. So when speaking about new trends in English language teaching, it's important to deal with innovation. Innovating EFL practices, it's not a matter of theory, but it's a matter of changing our practices while teaching this foreign language. That's why my title talks more about practices. Through a theoretical model, I will explain, you will understand how you need to change things in your perceptions, in your actions, and in your way of teaching and way of learning. Capacity building through interactive and culturally relevant approaches. Dr. Qassi talked about empathy, about interpersonal relationships, and about culture. And the way we interact might differ in terms of perceptions from one culture to another. That's why it's important to know how to perceive things and how others perceive things in order to react and interact accordingly. That's why this presentation comes to talk about integrating cultural activities and adopt interactive approaches into English language teaching, because this will more likely lead all the counterparts, whether they are students or teachers or even policymakers, to think about how to build capacity among our learners to foster culturally relevant activities and engaging practices. So it comes to highlight how such strategies in our teaching can transform EFL practices in Algeria. Generally in my talks, I do no more talk about case studies, but try to offer a model of thinking in order to be adopted nationally speaking. Why not? Because our talk is not only destined to teachers, but even to policymakers to make our voice heard. This will lead to what we call sustainable and inclusive development of English language teaching. we cannot talk about capacity building without saying a word about what is it. Generally, I do not define in my talks, but because I know, I already talked about this issue in one of the international conferences in Paris lately, and many asked about what is it. So it's a misknown concept by many of our colleagues. So when speaking about capacity building, we talk about what UNESCO defined as the development and strengthening of skills, the processes and resources necessary for both communities and organizations to adapt and thrive in a fast-changing world. And everybody agrees about the fast-changing world we are living in and the tons of skills we need to develop simultaneously and in a short period of time. When speaking about communities, so ELT classroom is a community, the university is a community. We can take the university as an enterprise or company, so it can be also seen as an organization. So that's why developing capacity building is a must nowadays. Because this has to do with the relevance of this concept development globally, and higher education cannot be exception. So it goes beyond the mere execution of the tasks we ask students to do. It's no more providing tasks to students to get assessed and get scores or marks. It's more than that. It's requiring a transformation of the student's mindset. If we arrive to change the student's mindset and change their mindset, so we are transforming and revolutionizing our education and higher education. And this can come true with sustained innovation and adoption of technologies like AI and ICTs. Many talk about forbidding AI. It's a reality that we are living in nowadays. So we need to know how to cope with it and use it and adapt it, but raise awareness about how to do so, instead of just forbidding. People use it, by hook or by crook. So we need to know how to adapt this AI and technology and ICTs in our classrooms in order to be relevant globally. Links to sustainable development goals. Why we cannot escape talking about capacity building? Because it is part of the SDGs goals. Capacity building supports national and global development goals, such as number 17 in the goals of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. This emphasizes that technology and innovation are catalysts for growth. So we need to stop thinking that we need to avoid using AI and technology, but finding strategies to do so safely. So capacity here refers to the ability of an individual, group, organization, or system to deliver intended outcomes. While capacity building is improving the ability, it's improving this ability of the entity to perform. So thinking as a team, as a group, not as an individual. So there are a number of defining characteristics for capacity building, and here I've provided a couple of examples here and resources. I will talk about the process of capacity building. One of its paramount issues is we need to think about the process of change and how to manage transformations. All what we're living in the last 5 years is every year we have something new and a new situation. So we need to know how to manage such transformations and how to process the change smoothly. And we need to think about the long-term process. Thinking about just a new idea and adopt it immediately cannot work, but we need to think about the medium and the long-term process. Because it is not a once-off intervention, and here I can give the example of the integration of English at university, the MI. So it cannot be a once-off intervention, but we need to think about its long-run results and outcomes. So when also talking about capacity building, so So it should be first internal, or as we call it technically, endogenous process, meaning that change needs to be driven from within the individual. I cannot force people to change, but I need to convince them to accept that change, and the effort should come from inside. What you know about motivation, the intrinsic side of the issue here. And all organizations to build a sustained model. So here again, we go back to the idea of adopting a model and accepting that model and appropriating that model to succeed it. This term also involves stakeholders. I cannot create change myself. I agree on this model, I adopt it in my classroom, but if there is no rule, no legislation, no accommodations, no accompaniment from the institutional side, it will be lost as an effort. So the only thing we can do is that we can influence the small group we are teaching, and this is not quite interesting. Capacity building measures obstacles and progress and outcomes. So we need to teach our students and our new teachers, newcomers to the field of teaching at university, to know how to manage struggles, obstacles, stress, and how to follow the progress and measure the outcomes. And when talking also about this concept of capacity building, so we need to talk about going beyond improving the human resource capacity to encompass the organizational and institutional context. So all these ingredients will allow the Algerian university to go forward, because we are following a global model which is adopted worldwide. Let's contextualize this definition, but we need to talk about the globalization and the role of English, because Algeria, when trying to integrate further into the global economy, if the Algerian government tried to impose EMI, English as a medium of instruction in higher education, one of the goals is visibility, metrics, and recognition on global arena. So the global economy, the English for proficiency becomes crucial for global competitiveness and participation in international research and business. And Algeria has recently started to perform its strategic ambition to operate. Many might be critical, but of course we said we need a long-term process. So it's not at a sudden that we can see the fruit. For primary school, as she has just talked about, one of the cases, so we can think about the future generation. It's not a matter of 1 or 2 years to see the outcome of these first generation of students who started learning English in primary schools. For universities, the same thing. So we need to operate technologically mediated educational and training programs. Still, we are not at this level. So we need to think about that, how to integrate technology in our programs in order to design and prepare students for a knowledge-based society. Despite its acknowledged potential, the work of the Directorate General for Higher Education is at a very early stage in introducing e-learning methodologies and technologies to improve the quality of education, to enhance teaching and learning. So it's at embryonic stage. One of the maybe the approaches or the pedagogies we can think, just an example, is interactive pedagogies in EFL. I tried to use this picture in order to show you that when we speak about interactive pedagogies, we can talk about cultural responsive teaching and culturally sustained teaching. So it's a response and sustainable development. When talking about teaching, using teaching methods and practices, we need to focus on the culture and on the approaches and interactive pedagogies. So in Algeria, innovative pedagogical approaches are essential for enhancing the communicative skills and fostering inclusive, culturally aware classrooms. I'm not going to give a lot of examples because this can be part of a course, but many strategies and many teaching methods can rely on interactive pedagogies, giving examples of group projects, peer teaching, digital tools for real-time interaction, etc. And when speaking about methods and practices, these focus on the strength of the students instead of the weaknesses. The new approaches rely on the strengths, always the positive side of the students' achievements rather than the negative side. We need to value diversity among our learners and diversity in the at the cultural, linguistic, and personal level. Here we can see these three that starts from marginalized communities, and then when we use culturally relevant teaching, we can have the tree prosper, and here we will have both the culturally responsive teaching and culturally sustainable teaching as two parallel trends in order to make an inclusive education possible in any kind of class. One can say we are not culturally different. Yes, we are. Algeria is in itself multilingual, multicultural, and with the coming of many international students, and you can see the growth of international students to our universities, also we need to adopt such pedagogies in all subject fields. A time for reflection. It's just to have you breathe before carrying on. And then we move how capacity building enhances EFL through interactive and culturally relevant approaches. Well, you're going to see here are the characteristics of the capacity building. And we will mirror out the definition of the United Nations to the EFL context. So what I did here is just to bring the EFL, the capacity building definition by the UNESCO and try to adopt it in our EFL context. The characteristics are change management. For change management, so we need to redefine EFL teaching methods by emphasizing interactive and culturally inclusive strategies. We need to encourage a shift from traditional lecture-based methods to participatory approaches, because this will foster what we call active learning. And we need to encourage teachers to adapt their methodologies to diverse students' needs while maintaining cultural sensitivity. One of the second characteristics is a long-term process. Remember the definition. Capacity building requires sustainable efforts in training educators. So I cannot speak about the outcome without training the educators for capacity building and the long-term outcome we are longing for. And developing resources to support interactive and culturally aware teaching. What does this mean? It means that when we speak about the long-term process, teachers should also adopt their approaches, methods, techniques, and strategies, and activities, and lesson plans to the capacity building principles. So even developing our courses should be based on these principles. And this will be a first change or an initial change for improvement, to reach improvement. And our objective is to reach the broader transformation. The two other characteristics of capacity building, so internal process and the stakeholder. All of these are taken from the definition of the United Nations, if you remember. So through AI, higher education must be driven from within the institutions. So the institutions should adapt the internal process and the model, and this will be transferred to educators and students later on. So it should come from within. Because what we do as teachers is a personal initiative. It's not based on a collegial decision and model which is adopted. Universities need to take ownership of their AI integration strategies. We need to have an AI strategy. Still, it is not done. So this is one of the recommendations we are trying to suggest in order to start adopting AI strategies from within the institutions in order to be adopted by the whole community in higher education institutions. By creating self-sustaining model, sustainability is one of the key issues in succeeding any model or any project. Where educators and administrations and students actively engage in using AI to enhance education outcomes. This ensures that the change is lasting and adaptable to future technological advancements. Adopting a model will make us alert to future changes, and we know that technology is changing in a frightening and rapid way. We finish with the stakeholder involvement, where capacity building in EFL must be driven from within education institutes, as we said, and we need to think about how to make decisions and models to be adopted by the stakeholders. According also to the definitions, so we have the measuring obstacles, progress, and outcomes. So institutions must assess how interactive and culturally relevant teaching approaches impact key metrics such as student engagement, language proficiency, and classroom participation. We need also to talk about the tools to measure, like surveys, questionnaires, and see whether there is a continuous improvement or not in our teaching methodologies, and this can be possible so through the learners' outcomes. Reflecting on the obstacles and the difficulties will help us develop further and try to avoid the same committed errors in the future, because this will help us refine our teaching strategies for a better success. It's not the problem of committing errors or getting obstacles, but it's to measure things, try to find solutions, and try to go forward. Finally, beyond human resources capacity, schools and universities, and you see that here we talk more about the stakeholders and the universities or higher education institutions. They need to invest in resources and robust infrastructures. These are crystal clear important to have the right or the appropriate atmosphere to work these models and to reach this capacity building skill appropriately, ranging from physical resources like the classrooms, the institution policies, etc., to the way we deal with our students and teachers alike. To conclude, capacity building in EFL through interactive and culturally relevant approaches is transformative strategy. We need to incorporate culturally relevant learning experience and create stronger connections between language and context. Even if capacity building has been defined by the United Nations, but you see that I have tried to contextualize to the Algerian context. It's not taking things blindly. Yes, globally this is what is adopted. I need to see the Algerian context and its needs and adopt it to our culture, to our virtues, to our values, and to what we need to export to the world as well. Because what others do are trying to export their culture, but it doesn't mean that I need to eliminate my culture. I need to provide a very nice picture of my culture using the global concept and export it again to the world. So, call to action is by encouraging educators, policymakers, and stakeholders to commit to continuous professional development and collaborative innovation, advocate for unified efforts to integrate these practices into educational systems, ensuring a brighter, more inclusive future for EFL learners and teachers. Let me say concluding words. Capacity building in EFL is not just about teaching a language. It's about cultivating understanding, empathy, again, and connections across diverse cultural landscapes. Building the capacity for culturally inclusive teaching ensures that language learning is not only about words, but also about understanding the world through diverse lenses. And thank you all for your attention. Just to show that I'm really keen about culture, so this is the Journal of Studies in Language, Culture and Society that will publish, hopefully, many of the works of all the conferences we have organized in our department. Thank you, and the floor is yours. Thank you, Mrs. Chair.
Thank you, Professor, for sharing your insights with us today. Professor Idri, in her presentation, suggests a progressive approach to EFL education, focusing on capacity building that has the potential of empowering students through engaging and culturally relevant teaching practices. She suggests the use of interactive, engaging, and student-centered learning experiences and culturally relevant approaches that take into consideration the backgrounds and the Algerian context of the learners and the global context as well, making their experiences more meaningful and effective. Of course, this leads to students to understand better the world in which they live. So, thank you, Professor. I think that now we have an online presentation given by Dr. Mariam Kater from the University of Algiers too. So, Dr. Kater, are you with us? Are you with us, Doctor? Okay. Yes, so I think Dr. Kater is not with us. So we proceed to the next speaker, Dr. Wafa Werkini from the University of Jelfa. Dr. Werkini, are you with us? Would you please activate the sound? We don't hear you.
In this conference.
Doctor, she has started. Okay. Okay. Yes, they are.
Integration of EMI, or English as medium of instruction, into our higher education system
Well, thank you, Dr. Wafa Werkini. Werniki? Sorry. I'm sorry, apologies. So we are grateful for your valuable contribution and for respecting time as well. So, Wafa Werkini, in her presentation, she tackles Algeria's transition from English for specific purposes to English as a medium of instruction, EMI. In higher education, she highlights its opportunities and challenges. She uses surveys and interviews with faculty and students, okay, and these reveals gaps in language proficiency, teaching methods, and institutional support. This is what she explained. She said that educators feel unprepared to teach complex subjects in English, while students struggle with learning content in English. She provides recommendations to enhance academic outcomes and equip students for global workforce demand. So, thank you. Okay, so now I think that... Okay, so we move on to the next presentation by Dr. Allal Bel'aid. So we move to the next speakers, Dr. Khairdin Amel and Bouharour Karima from the University Mohammed Bouguera, okay, Boumerdas University. I don't know whether they are here. Would you please activate your mic, please? Would you please activate your mic? Doctors, we don't hear you. There's a problem of sound. Would you please activate your mics?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. Yes, we do. First, doctors, let me... Okay.
language and content than it could be if they were taught in isolation. But what effects this has on the acquisition of content? The question also arises, of course, in what way a specific academic or scientific kind of content influences the language learning process. And finally, it is highly important to look at the question in what way the learning environment changes if academic content and language are brought together. This talk will attempt to answer these questions and at the same time argue that content and language integrated learning as a pedagogical approach has the potential to modify language and content teaching both in school and at university. SLA versus constructivism in CLIL. First, we have the interactionist position in SLA. In Platt and Brooks' paper, it is argued that task engagement plays an important role in the language learning process. They assume that language learning takes place while learners interact in the target language when engaging in a task which they have to solve. The tasks which they use for data elicitation are jigsaw tasks in which informants have to complete pictures or maps by interviewing their partners who possess this information. Interaction is seen here as a social process during which meaning is constructed jointly by both partners. It is still conversational interaction, but content is a controlled variable. Constructivism. So according to social constructivists, only input in which the comprehender can get engaged or even involved in can be processed and will in the end lead to a construction which he can make use of. So in constructivist theory, it is not like in interactionist position in SLA, simply meaningful input which is of importance for language processing, but input which is meaningful but also significant and involving for the comprehender. Constructivists emphasize also the importance of the social content within which learning takes place. It is clear that an environment which is suited for social interaction will better promote learning and language learning processes. This leads to the last point, the organization of a learning environment in which the potential of CLIL can be used to its full extent. Innovative CLIL classrooms. In a traditional learning environment, the learning context is dominated by decisions made outside the classroom by the administration or by the school. In innovative CLIL classrooms, the learning environment is created in cooperation between students and teachers. Together. They set up a kind of learning laboratory in which they experiment and do research and thus deal with their learning content in a motivating way. Research and experimentation can also be carried out with language, of course, but a learning laboratory lends itself much more readily to investigation in social and natural sciences. The content subject makes research and experimentation more realistic than language. In a way, experimentation with language can be prepared through more realistic research in the content subject. In an innovative classroom, which is regarded as a research laboratory, occasions for group work are much more numerous. It is clear that content subjects with their rich potential for research and experimentation add a new dimension to group work, that is authenticity. Content subjects enforce group work in the classroom, and in this way, a framework for social interaction is provided, which contributes both to learning and to language learning. Learning strategies also have a very high potential with respect to the promotion of learning and language learning. Only learners who have learned to work with specific learning techniques and study skills will be successful learners. Indeed, focusing on learning strategies in a CLIL environment will help to promote students' strategic abilities both in language and content learning. In conclusion, there can be no doubt that content and language integrated learning is a very important new paradigm in language teaching, which is worthwhile to try out. The more languages our students know in their professional field, the better they will be qualified for their profession. And English is not a foreign language anymore. It has become a key qualification for everyone. And finally, a professional qualification starts with a third or fourth language, and CLIL shows a way in this direction. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, doctors Khairdin Amel and Buharur Karima, for your insightful presentation and also for respecting time. Well, just to summarize the idea of your communication, well, you examined the effectiveness of content and language integrated learning compared to English as a medium of instruction in enhancing language and content learning in educational settings, from the primary cycle to higher education or in professional setting. You also examined whether integrating language and content is more effective in terms of saving time, language acquisition, and the quality of academic content. Your study, I think that in your study, in the conclusion, you advocate for CLIL as a pedagogical approach capable of enhancing language and content teaching. So thank you very much. We want just to check whether the other speakers are here. Dr. Miriam Kater. I think she's not with us. Silly, I think that we should proceed to another presenter. Silly Asia. Yeah, Silly. Right. Silly. Where is she? Okay. So, yeah. So, Silly Asia and Khawla Buskin, good morning. Good morning. Of course, yes. No problem. Would you please share your screen, Silly Asia? Okay, Celie, we are running out of time. We should respect the schedule of this conference. So, is it possible to read your communication without showing the screen, your PowerPoint? Okay, so maybe we move to the yes, Q&A, question and answer. Yes, so we take some I invite, okay, the audience to ask their questions. Yes, please do. Yes, Dr. Ben Khouja.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My question is addressed to Professor Idri. Concerning capacity building, as you tackle this theme, that is based, and you said that it is based on integrating AI in the classroom, and that's very important, that it's a must. Could you please give us at least some strategies, one or two strategies to introduce AI in the classroom, and how can students use it safely, as you said? What can you propose in the actual context? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Chair, shall I answer or just we leave? Yes. Yeah, okay, thank you. Well, this is very paramount question. Of course, capacity building is not only related to AI and technology, but one of the aspects when speaking about being alert to change is this rapid change when introducing suddenly the artificial intelligence, and mainly the ChatGPT. We know nowadays most people use ChatGPT. Maybe the way we use it can be not safe. It's not using the ChatGPT is a problem, or the AI is a problem, but because it is the free version and it is available for everybody, that we can be misled by the content it offers. It can be maybe a menace to the learner's development in terms of language proficiency, in terms of critical thinking, in terms of being autonomous, in terms of being maybe bound to what the ChatGPT offers as facilities. In order to use it safely, it's important, as I said, to implement it in our educational system, and we need to have teacher development and teacher training in terms of the use of AI. I cannot ask my students not to use the AI, and I use it myself, and I have not been trained to use it as it should be. I've seen one of the videos of one of the AI maybe smart minds in the world saying that it is not only a technology, but it is one of the reflective bodies that evolves over time. So we still do not know the limits of the AI revolution, and we do not know what we expect in just the coming year. I don't say the coming years. So using it safely does not come from us. It should be institutionalized, and we need to have maybe legislative protection and the body of texts that might lead us to act ethically and we need to act also professionally, and we need to know the limits of the use of the AI. When AI started, many, even scientific papers were using the AI as an author. Now, just a year later, many of the publishers in the world, the reputed publishers of the world, started adding this icon of AI-powered content or used with AI. Even when using your Facebook, there is an icon saying whether it is AI-supported content or not. So we are learning how to maybe use reference of AI in what aspects we need to use it. But in my sense as an educator, the learner and the teacher alike should contribute together in order to use this technological innovation in order to construct content together. So we need to develop AI literacy on the one hand, and show what are the means and the technological tools appropriate for EFL and ESL classes. And for each learning stage, not all AI technological tools are appropriate for X or Y, so we need to determine what to use, when to use, how much to use it, when to use it, and we need also to think about what are the skills needed to develop for the language, for the life skills and soft skills, and for the technological skills. All of these together cannot be used by the student or by the teacher, but should be institutionalized. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think Dr. Wafa Werniki raised her hand to ask a question.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'd like to ask, I've got two questions if you don't mind. One to Dr. Fadila and one directed to Professor Idri.
Yes, please do.
EFL teachers leverage local folk tales to foster students' engagement while simultaneously developing the 4 skills or the listening, speaking, reading, and writing skills in a resource-limited environment. And my question to Professor Idri is also, how can we or how can Algerian EFL educators incorporate interactive and culturally relevant approaches to overcome challenges such as larger class sizes, limited resources, and varying levels of students' proficiency? Thank you so much.
Would you please repeat your questions?
The question of Dr. Fadila is, what or how can we, or the Algerian EFL educators, sorry, this is for Professor Idri, how can Algerian EFL educators incorporate interactive and culturally relevant approaches to overcome challenges such as larger class sizes, limited resources, and varying levels of students' proficiency? And the question to Dr. Fadila is, how can Algerian EFL teachers leverage local folk tales to foster students' engagement while simultaneously developing the 4 skills in a resource-limited environment? In a resource-limited environment.
Start? Okay. So thank you, Dr. Wafa, for your question. Of course, it's problematic when we think of limited resources, but I think that nowadays there are efforts. We have it's right that the folk tales are generally oral tales, but nowadays we have recorded, we can use this recorded tales, they are, of course, in Arabic or in Berber. We make the effort to translate them first to prepare. We prepare the resources by translating from one language to another in order to adapt them and use them as a pedagogical tool for teaching the 4 skills. It means that we can overcome this problem by just using translation. We make translation of the short stories, of our short stories, into English, and then we use them in EFL classes. Thank you.
We move to Professor Idri to answer the question.
Thank you, dear friend, Dr. Wafa, one of our faithful presenters all along the conferences. Your question is paramount, but if you remember, when I talked about the characteristics of capacity building, one of the characteristics is dealing with the obstacles, the challenges, and thinking about the outcomes. Of course, in order to develop capacity building, we need also to think about starting from inside the institution by maybe seeing what are the problems we are facing nowadays. One of them, as you said, is large classes, or the other is limited resources. And in my conclusion, before the conclusion, I talked about starting by the infrastructures, the classrooms, the resources, implementing technology. So it means it is building, like when you build a house, you need to have all the ingredients. So first, what are the challenges? How to deal with the challenges? What is missing in our infrastructures? What is missing for our classes to prosper and to develop this capacity building? It should be a long-term result and outcome. So we need to think about how to resolve these problems of the classes. Not only why do we have these large classes? Because also we have less infrastructures, less classrooms, less teachers of the content. So thinking about having more teachers specialized in the content we would like to teach, thinking about having more infrastructures, more equipped classrooms, more human and material resources, before starting implementing the technology we would like to integrate and the model we would like to adopt. And this comes from the government, then the higher education institutions, before talking about the educators. What the educator can do is only thinking about culturally relevant activities and interactive activities that might be related to, possible with the large classes. I personally sometimes do focus groups, and we try to maybe interact with the students, with their stories, with the success stories, strong stories, and we discuss a couple of examples. This can be case studies within our focus groups. Instead of listening to every student in the classroom, for example, we have a round table. This is the way I teach research methodology, which is one of the maybe toughest topics in our students' programs. They find difficulties in that. So we opted for the focus groups where we have some interactions. Sometimes we accept posting their posters and their activities. We take a couple of examples, case studies, we have peer review, we have teachers' assessment, we have feedback in a very lovely atmosphere. And we use our limited resources. We use just posters and papers, and we accept our class as it is, and we transform the class into a circle, and here we go. The teacher is taking the role of a student or a tutor, and we change the roles accordingly. You are talking about a very important problem, which is mixed ability classes. When we have different linguistic abilities, I guess we should not have this problem in linguistic proficiency difference, because generally when a student is first year students, second year students, there is a scores. There are students who just move from one year to another. They are supposed to be almost within the same, I don't say the same level, but they are almost the same year of studies, differences appear everywhere in the world because the IQ of students is different, their education background is different, their motivation is different. This is what makes the students different in the class. Their involvement, some students, we see them everywhere. Others are absent all along the year. So here, this is what makes the difference. It's not the problem of language proficiency, and it's not a problem with mixed ability, but the idea is more how to attract these students for to our courses, how to attract students and make our courses appealing to our students in order to come not for the sake of marks, but for the sake of loving the content we are offering. And I think that this is a big issue and needs another conference, in my view.
So may I add just a point concerning the question that was addressed to me, Dr. Wafa. At Béjaïa, we have what we call the National Research Center in Amazigh or Berber language and culture. I think that we can initiate a kind of collaboration with this institution, between the university and this institution, in order to translate the short stories of our heritage, cultural background and heritage into English, and then in long term we are going to have the pedagogical support that we can use as teaching tools in EFL classes. So I think that it's high time to have this kind of collaboration between the university and this National Center of Research in the Amazigh language and culture. Thank you.
Okay, maybe we take another question. The students. Do you have any comment or question to ask this?
If I don't, I have. If you don't have, I always have something to say. I would like to comment something about what Dr. Wafa Waniki said. She said that I am one of the those who agreed on the integration of EMI, and not this way. I think this is the view of most teachers I have talked about with when talking about the integration of EMI, because it was a sudden shift indeed, and many people have become experts talking on social media, and this is a problem we are facing. So we need, I think that, Dr. Wafa, we need to think about creating maybe a committee, a national committee of experts tailored by the government itself to discuss how to have a sustainable, maybe, integration of EMI instead of just making sudden decisions, and we are suffering from what we call resistance to change. Don't you think that we need first to have a national vision of the general English maybe training of English instead of talking about EMI at this level? Don't you think that talking about EMI is premature, but we need to think first about having proficient teachers of other fields in English, general English first, and then adapt it to ESP?
Unfortunately, let me be honest a little bit about the commission. When I've read some names in the commission, majority belong to the literature field. And how can this help or foster, for example, the real implementation of EMI in Algerian higher education? I'm sorry, this is between brackets, but I want really, since you've mentioned it, that we really want to foster the implementation of English as a medium of instruction. We really need experts in the field or people.
We don't hear you, Dr. Wafa. You lost? No. Yeah, I think we lost.
Yes, just of course she talked about a committee, national committee. We are not here to argue what the committee is doing or whether they are from specialty of didactics, of literary or literature. This is not the issue. The issue